Let's go to a 9-year NFL veteran. He played football at the University of South Carolina. His son played at the University of Alabama, and his other son, CJ, actually works in our building here in Tuscaloosa at Town Square Media, is one of the DJs on 105.1 The Block. Corey Miller, I hope you're having an awesome day. Welcome back to T-Town.
Thank you, my brother. Thanks for having me. And, of course, down in South Carolina, I don't know about in Tuscaloosa, but we're getting a ton of rain. So I've been kind of confined into my truck for the last couple hours, just chilling.
Well, hey, it was raining all morning here. It's for about 3 days solid. I almost feel like that Tuscaloosa's turned out of Seattle. But we're drying out now, and the sun's out, and we're beginning to unclog all of our water because we have had tons and tons of rain. So right here on the river market, I'm curious what you traveled into when Christian came out of Columbia, South Carolina, committed to Nick Saban. What were your expectations of playing for Nick Saban as a father and someone who understands the game at a high level? What were your expectations going in that you were talking to Christian about that recruiting process? He made his decision to go to Alabama.
Well, Ryan, we knew it was going to be we always talk about the process, and that was definitely a word that was fitting for him and going to school at 17 years old and going to a program like Alabama that was best in the country and going up against so many other 5-stars and 4-stars. And, he was a guy that was going to be a late bloomer. With his size, he had the length, he had the height. We knew that he had to work out, get weight on, and that was going to come just a matter of time. So it was one of those things we knew, you would have to exercise patience because you're coming from, a program at Spring Valley High School in Columbia where you had 28-something sacks your senior year playing all the time, and then now you basically got to sit. But you had a great chance to work in practice, and that's the thing, that when you go to school like that, to a program like Alabama, practice is just as critical because you're getting an opportunity to go against guys that are going to the league, guys that are older, and you get better. And I think that's what happened in Christian's case, and then you get to the junior and senior years, now you're a starter, now you're playing a lot, now you're contributing, and it worked out great. I mean, it's the perfect storm for him, and he was fine with that. He was never that guy, that kid that was, hey, I want to play, and, I'm mad, and I should be playing. Maybe I'm a little better than that guy. I'm going to be in the transfer portal. He was never that guy. He focused on everything he needed to focus on, learned. He grew as a young man. Coach Saban always produced great young men at Alabama, and just extremely proud of what he has accomplished and the job that Coach Saban has done for him. And he was always honest with us. He kept it real, and that's what you wanted.
Corey, when you look at Nick Saban and the system, because we talk a lot about on the field, we don't know if we talk a lot about off the field, maybe as much as we should, from, Amy Bragg, from Scott Cochran, who was here for 13 years, Jeff Allen, the off-the-field side of role of helping develop the other side of football that we don't see as much. We see a 3.5-hour game. We can register that, and we can measure that with a scoreboard up there. But it's off the field sometimes that a lot of that growth happens as well.
Absolutely. I mean, think about all the money that's invested in the speakers. Different guys who've had great success. Kobe Bryant, I believe a year or so ago, came through. I mean, Stephen A. Smith, guys from all walks of life that have accomplished great things. He brings those guys in that can relate. Maybe came from some of the same type of background some of these young men have come from. He continues to pour in those guys. I mean, and it is about, off the field because, these guys got a long life to live after football. Most of them are not going to play in the league for a long time. So what are you going to do with your life? And I think that type of training is more crucial than any type of training that you can get. I would never, ever worry about Christian after football. Whenever the Lord says it's over, he's going to be successful because I think that's the brand that they built in Alabama, to be successful on and off the field, that the next 40, 50, 60 years of your life, when you're done playing, you're going to be okay. And so that's the culture he builds, and I really appreciate that, being in what I'm doing right now with ministry and pouring into young men's lives. That's critical. And I'm very thankful. I know me and his mother are very thankful at the job Coach Saban and his staff along the way has done for my son.
We're talking to Corey Miller, the father of Christian Miller, but also a 9-year NFL veteran in the National Football League at linebacker. Corey, I'm curious, when you look at the game, the way that you see it, the way that you understand it, what's the biggest change that you see in college athletics on the football, the way the game is played, in between the lines?
Well, we had fullbacks and tight ends. You know what I mean? When I played,
Sure.
It was grown man football at the highest. And, the run game was the most important thing. It was not the passing game. We didn't see a lot of spread. We didn't see the 20 personnel, the 2 backs and 3 wide outs for the 11. We didn't see all these spread you out, tempo, the RPO game, all these things that we're seeing now. That was really non-existent. Warren Moon and the Houston team, they spread you out. Jim Kelly and Buffalo, they spread you out. But there weren't a lot of teams back then when I played that did all that stuff. So, it was really geared to stopping the run. It was man on man. It was defeating your blocks. A lot of things that Alabama really was doing just a few years ago. I mean, that's what made them so dominant, because they had the pro game and style, running the football, being physical in the trenches, defensive and offensive line, stopping the run, gap integrity, all of these different things that is associated with old school football. Alabama did for a long time, but the game has evolved. It's changed. It's a passing league now. It's basketball on turf. It's fast. So you got to get long ranges. You got to get linebackers that look like Christian Miller, the bigger athletic basketball-looking type to play on the edges. When I played Sam, I played the same position. I was a thumper. 260. I could smash tight ends, tackles, and play the run, but also could rush and cover. I could do a little bit of everything. Now you got to have fast, speedy guys. So, the game has changed a great deal. Like, base defense now is nickel defense. Back in the day, really, it was a 3-4 / 4-4-3. Now you look at 3-3-5s, 4-2-5s. That's really your base defense, because you got to match up with the personnel. You got to go speed on speed. Therefore, you need smaller, faster, athletic guys, and that's probably the biggest change that I've seen, going forward.
Do you ever look at the RPO and you wonder, because we were built on defense here. We kind of even going back to 1961, Alabama gave up 25 total points. We had 6 shutouts in 1961, 64, 65, winning a national title. Should have won in 66, 73, 78, 79, 92. And really the one thing that all these teams have in common, 2009, 2011, 2012, 2015, 2017, I mean, you look at defensive just greatness. But do you ever look at now the RPO game? Is that unfair for a second and third level guy to read? He's firing off the football. You read run, you come up for run, and it's a pass right over the top of your head.
Yeah, it's difficult. It is unfair. I mean, I hate it. Watching the game right now, I hate those. And, if you're a defensive player, it's unfair. I mean, you really don't have much of a chance. I mean, that's why defenses like Alabama's of the world, LSU, these really good defense over the years have suffered some, just because you're going to give up plays. You're going to give up yards. I mean, and you have to go into these games, especially when you're playing, really good talent, when you got the receivers, like the Judys and these guys, Ruggs and these guys like that. I mean, you're going to give up plays. You're going to give up some runs because, guys got to read your keys. You're always taught to read your keys. Well, if I'm inside backer and the guard is firing out at me, well, I got to step up, Well, you got receivers and tight ends, slot guys running behind you. Linemen are down the field a lot. They don't call that a great deal. I mean, it's really unfair to the defense. And I tell people all the time, I sit and argue, they talk about Alabama's defense, and they're not the same. Of course they're not the same, because the rules have changed, and the RPO game has given the offense an unfair benefit. Because you're not going to be able to shut people out unless you're just playing a bad team. They're going to give up yards. That's just part of it. What you have to do, though, Ryan, is be really good in the red zone. When the field is shortened, when you can play up closer, you got to try to get your hands on guys. You can't let receivers free release down the field, and you just got to try to make teams kick field goals. And that's where you can be good. I think when you look at good defense today, look at how good they are in the red zone, because 20-20, you're probably going to give up some yards.
When you look at the targeting rule and the way that that's called, the NCAA is discussing something, and I'll be honest with you. I look at that targeting rule. I hated it when it first was implemented. I understand it. It's there for a courtroom defense, for an attorney to say, hey, we did something about it. We tried to make a prevention. But I don't know if I watch football and say, well, that was with ill intent. That guy was really trying to hurt another player, but then, they kick him out and, the walk of shame where, they walk him back to the locker room, and I'm going, that young man's career may be done. I mean, that may be his final game. It could be his last couple of games. And it's like, is that really deserved? What's your opinion on the targeting rule in college football?
I don't like it at all. And I go back to the Ohio State Clemson game, right? They're one of the better defenders, gets a targeting call, he's kicked out. Makes a huge difference in the ball game. I mean, they give up some passes. They got the backup in there and give up some plays, I think largely because he was not in the game. And it happens all the time. I mean, it's hard for defensive players. Sometimes when you got guys that are moving so fast, and your body's contorted all different ways, and the guy lowers his head like, Trevor Lawrence did in that ball game against Ohio State. Then you have a helmet. The helmet, not that you're intentionally trying to do that, but sometimes when you got a guy coming up from a safety spot or a linebacker spot, and a guy's running, and, you go to launch, and his body moves, and you hit head, and now you say, hey, he's out the game. I mean, it's hurting football teams. It really is. It is costing some teams, I think, some wins when you're missing your better players. It happens, and I don't like the rule. I would say, if you're going to be that picky with the rule, they need at least 2 times, kind of like the unsportsmanlike conduct. Here's your first warning. The next one you're out.
Sure.
Maybe you give them a warning the first time, and if it happens again in the ball game, then maybe, if you want to kick them out, then do that. But you can't do it on one time. Because guys are not in college going up trying to hurt somebody. Again, it takes away from the aggression of the defense. You got guys in the secondary, linebacker guys, they're afraid. They're afraid. That's why tackle is falling off. Guys are scared to come up and hit guys now and follow through with tackle because they don't want to get kicked out of the game. It's taken away from the game. I appreciate the caution. I appreciate them trying to help the players and really, keep them safe. I understand that. But at the same time, I think they're a little bit over the top, and it's one of those rules that I think needs to be looked at and changed.
We're talking to Corey Miller, 9-year NFL veteran, played linebacker spot there. And Corey, let me go back to, I feel like we're asking you about this defensive philosophy. When you look at offense, the way, and I know we talked about the RPO, but they're scoring so quick. It takes more energy, right, to play defense than it does offense. Am I right about that, or is that just something I'm throwing up against the wall?
No, you're right.
I've heard that before. So when you talk about offense that scores in, 90 seconds, 15 seconds, you bring the defense right back out there. I look back at, 2016, we defended 100 plays down in Tampa. Deshaun Watson got us there a little bit on that final play. But you think about how that impacts defensive play, of just asking a defense to come right back out there as soon. These explosive offenses certainly help us on the scoreboard, but are they helping our friends on the defensive side of the football?
Not at all. You don't see those long drives, methodical drives anymore. 4 yards, 3 yards, 3rd and short, throw the tight end on an out route, get a first down. You don't see those things too much anymore where a defense can get over there and kind of, gather themselves, go look at some adjustments and things on the iPad. They got to go right back on the field. Yeah, and it's tough. It really is. So guys are tired. Offense knows what they're doing. Now when you're tired, you start to make mental errors. You start making mistakes, and you're giving up plays. So, listen, we always have known this. People want to see offense. People want to see the high scoring. They don't want to see a 13-10 game, which I love, when good football's been played like that. But most people don't want to see that. They want to see teams run up and down the field, and it's kind of like, that's why all the 7-on-7 stuff is so crazy now. It's not football anymore. To me, we're getting away from the game. We're gearing it towards like flag and, 50, 60 points. And there's no defense being played because the rules and everything else are taken away from you being able to play defense the right way.
What was it like to play with Lawrence Taylor?
It was amazing. He was that guy, man, that he just had it. Even though, my 3 years that I played with him, and he was older, but he still was an amazing football player. And his knowledge, and wisdom of the game was just amazing. How he understood, he could read tackles, and he had his move, had his counter move already ready to go. He taught me so much. But one of the things, Ryan, people don't really understand about Lawrence Taylor, he was a great run defender. Man, he can smash tight ends. He can play the run as well. Normally you see a guy that's known as a sack artist, that's all he could do. But Lawrence Taylor was a complete linebacker. He could cover. He can play the run. He's very physical. He can do all of that. But man, his tenacity. This guy, I mean, I've never seen a guy that, had that type of tenacity and that hidden anger that would come out on the football field when he'd go after people. I mean, it was unbelievable. And, playing with the guy that I have looked up to for years and having a chance to have my locker right next to him and for him to teach me the game of football the way he did, man, it was just amazing. I'm always blessed and so thankful having that opportunity, to play with a great Hall of Famer like you also, and he is, excuse me.
Well, another friend of our program here in Tuscaloosa is Howard Cross, which you spent a lot of years there with Howard at the New York Giants organization.
Yeah, it was my roommate for years on the road.
Was he? Okay, great.
Yeah, he was my dude, man. Me and Howard were very, very close. His roommate on the road. Me and him went at it all the time in practice. When you're talking about the physicality of the game, he was a dynamic blocker, long arm, 6'5", 6'6", 270. We went at it all the time, man, and we loved it. I mean, we go at it, but we were like really close friends, and he was a good football player, wasn't known for his catching ability. He would struggle today in these offenses because that's not what he was. But, man, back then he was a great, great player, great friend. Got me involved with, FCA, Bible studies and things like that, solid Christian man. And again, I just really, really enjoyed spending time with Howard. He always talked about Alabama all the time, and just amazing. I sent him a message a few years back and said, can you believe this? All those years we spent together playing, and then my son, he ends up at Alabama. Funny how life works.
Well, I mean, did he ever work in a couple of roll tides? I mean, Howard's a guy that we always like to talk here, and he no doubt shows the Alabama pride in being a former player at the University of Alabama. I mean, you probably learned a lot about Alabama just by osmosis there, right?
Oh, yeah. He talked about it all the time. Very proud of his university and of course, what they've accomplished and just the school. I mean, again, I never played against the SEC at South Carolina. We were independent, so we played a little bit of everybody, Michigan, Florida State. We played teams like that, Nebraska. I never really played. Georgia was the only SEC school that I really played against, I believe. But he always, man, he wore the A proudly, and of course, rightfully so now, being part of your family through my son, Christian, we have a good time. So, hey, I'm in the family now, so we can laugh about that.
Hey, no doubt. I think is he still broadcasting some baseball games? Is that right? He was working with the New York Yankees channel. I need to catch up with Howard and get him back on the show. I've got his number.
Yeah, he was doing some football too. I know he does. The MSG network, maybe the Yes network that does a lot of the Giants game for Carl Banks, my other teammate, played outside linebacker Bob Papa. He's a familiar name with broadcasting. So he's been doing the sideline reporting. And that was the other thing, too. Howard helped me get in the media. So both of us did a lot of media when we were up there in New York. So he's famous up there in the media, man. He's smart. He's a well-rounded guy. And, of course, I love myself some Howard Cross, man. But he's doing well.
Hey, Corey, final couple of minutes here with you. I certainly want to talk about your ministry at the end, but I want to slip in one more question here. When you think about, the playing days, and you were talking about offensive lineman a couple of minutes ago. I think in the early part of the interview with the RPO. What's the meanest, toughest offensive lineman that you went up against? The guy that you studied and a guy that you guys had some very unique battles back in the day.
Man, there's a reason why I don't like the Dallas Cowboys. It wasn't Emmitt Smith, it wasn't Troy Aikman, Michael Irvin, great dudes, but it was Larry Allen. And, man, he was the only – I was thinking about this the other day. He was the only dude that made me a little bit nervous. I mean, he had this big old head. I mean, the dude about 330, 340, could run a 4.6. And, man, it was painful. Dallas ran a lot of off-tackle plays, right? Counter O's, counter trades, what they called them, and the down blocks. And I had to close and spill, and I had to take out two. You didn't do your job unless you took out two. Well, I got 700-plus pounds coming at me. And Larry Allen will be one of those, man. I'm telling you right now, this dude, it hurt. When you hit him, you felt it. And then you had, Williams Eric Williams next to him, nasty, always holds you, poking in the eye. Those guys, man, they were tough. And people always talk about, who's the best back? They think I'm going to say Emmitt Smith. I love Emmitt, great player. But you and I could have got 1,000 yards behind that offensive line because I'm telling you, Emmitt Smith was great, but Barry Sanders was the best running back. But Emmitt had the Hall of Fame offensive line, man. It was a challenge every time we played those guys twice a year.
I'm glad you said Dallas Cowboys because my guy that produces the program back there, he's a big Pittsburgh guy. He likes to talk smack against my Cowboys all the time. And so I'm glad you praised my Dallas Cowboys.
They got a lot of jewelry, man. Both those teams got a lot of jewelry.
Finally, let's talk about what you're doing, your Giants for Christ, and talk about your ministry because, as your Twitter handle, and if you don't follow the Pastor of Pain on Twitter, you should, because he offers a very unique perspective. When you played 9 years, when you've got a son that played at the highest level here at the University of Alabama and now playing with the Carolina Panthers NFL organization, it provides a really good insight that I always find very valuable. But talk about Giants for Christ and what you're able to do there at your ministry.
Well, Ryan, thanks for letting me say a few things about it. Growing up in my little small town, Pageland, South Carolina, I got 10 brothers and sisters, and I remember one day, about 7 years old, my grandmother said, as she rocked in her old rocking chair, my great-grandmother, she said, Ethel, who's my mother, God's going to use that little boy one day. God got big plans for him. Well, after I retired, part of my testimony is I went through a huge depression state. Matter of fact, I was suicidal back in 2003. I was going through a divorce with Christian's mother. I had basically ruined my life, alcohol and some other things, went through depression. I was about ready to shoot myself, honestly, and I hate to be so dramatic and drastic, but that's the truth. And I had this gun, and I was ready to take my own life in 2003. And I heard the voice of my grandmother that said, don't you do it, that God has plans for your life. And that's when I turned my life around, and I was in Charleston, drove back home, and the Lord literally just told me, I want you to teach and train people how to become giants for Christ. And, football was your vehicle, but it's not what your purpose is in life. And so what I do now with men's ministry, with athletes, I try to pour into their lives and just, talk about my failures, talk about how I did wrong things, how the bad decisions that I made. Football isn't everything. You got life to live. God got a purpose and a plan. And, I want to pour in these young men's lives. I want to pour into the older men's lives. I've learned how to be a good husband, how to be a spiritual husband that leads your family the right way. And these are the things, that I really want to do with these young men. And I have the examples. I've been through what they're going through. I understand it. But I can tell you, man, we're seeing it right now with the depression and everything that we're talking about. The CTE is real. I've been in that dark place, and God saved me for a reason. There's a reason that I'm still here. And so my whole mission is help men become real giants. Giants is not about playing Alabama, South Carolina, the Giants. That's a great thing. But will you be a giant husband? Will you be a giant father? Will you be a giant friend? Will you love your neighbor the way that Christ tells us to love? And so now I live my life, and I had a 15-month kind of revival with my own self. I was talking about this today, that God had to really change my heart and said, you know what? I gave you 50 years, and you did it your way. You were the Lord of your own life. And now I want to be your Lord. I want to be master in everything you do. And it's the most important thing that I do every day that God opens my eyes, man, is, Lord, what can I do today to be more like you? What can I do today to make a difference in somebody's life? And that's my purpose. And it starts with myself. It starts with my wife, my children, and everybody else. And that's my goal now, man. I love the Giants for Christ because that's what it's all about, at the end of the day. And I hope, when my race is finished, that they will say, hey, that man was a giant for the Lord. And I don't care if they remember me as a football player, as a Sam linebacker, I could care less. But I want them to remember that, man, this man served the Lord the way he played the game, with a lot of passion, with a lot of intensity, and with a lot of love. And that's the man I want to be, and that's the way I want this ministry to be.
Corey, I'm going to ask you one more question. I said it was going to be the last one, but I ran right through that break, and I know you're a radio guy. You get
I'm
it.
sorry.
No. We'll catch up on breaks in a minute. This is more important. When you mention suicide a couple of minutes ago, that you went through that battle. You know, there are a lot of people listening. Sometimes things don't go their way. What would you tell that person that is in that valley of life to try to shake that and get away from it? How did you do it? I mean, obviously you said your grandmother, the spiritual side of that, and I think we all have those pillars of faith that get us through certain situations. But what would that advice be to someone who is going through an issue like that?
Man, just know that, you know, and God loves you. And no matter what you've gone through, no matter how much you failed in life, no matter how much you disappointed somebody, God loves you. And, you know, I was that prodigal son. And you know, and I had things wrong. Life to me was, in the early days, Ryan, was based on things and money and cars. And, you know, if I can get out the hood, so to speak, and have all this and have the Gucci bags and the Louis Vuitton, and that's what I lived for. And it disappointed me, and it failed me. People are so caught up with worldly things are going to pass away. And that's why we have depression, because their faith and their hope is in the wrong things that are going to fail you. But the good news is that Jesus came that we may have life and have it to the full. And you have hope. When that darkness telling you, as it was telling me that night, to kill myself, to take my life, the Lord was saying, I had a plan and a purpose. No matter what you've done, I paid that price for you. And come home. Get out that trough. Stop wallowing around with the pigs and change your life. And I'll make every crooked road straight. So I want to say to anybody that's suffering from it, the Lord loves you. There's no sin. There's no failure that's so big he cannot handle. His grace is sufficient. It will be, and you just need to just surrender and give your life to the Lord. And I'm telling you, it will be the best life that you could ever live. And that's why when I was down at Training Christian last year, and Josh and Mac and Jamie, all these guys I work with, even Ryan Anderson, it made me even more on fire to want to do these things, because I don't want these guys to get caught up into the league and all these other things that are lies and a trap that will tell them life is all about that. Life isn't all about that. Those things are going to fail you. People are going to fail you, but God will never fail.
Corey Miller, we enjoyed talking football. We also had a little prayer meeting there, so we appreciate the share of message.
Yes,
9-year NFL veteran of the NFL business, and his son played at the University of Alabama. Pastor of Pain on the Twitter account, and Ron Harden tells me a big hello to you. He's a friend of our
love
program.
Him, man. That's my guy, man. He's a great supporter, man, of my ministry, and I love Brian. So love you, Brian. I appreciate it. And, hey, I'm an Alabama guy, too, man. Roll Tide.
Hey, roll Tide to you. Corey, thank you, sir. Have an awesome afternoon.
You too, guys. Thanks for having me. God bless y'all.
Yes, absolutely. Corey Miller, 9-year NFL veteran, sharing a lot of football stories, but also talking about some life experience, and I had no clue that was where we were going to go. But Giants for Christ, 9-year NFL veteran, sharing some things and talking about guidance of the NFL. It was fun to be able to visit with him.